Okay, so hope all of you can see my screen. Let me just get the Zoom stuff on the other thing. Okay, so just want to quickly get a note. How many of your developers right now in this particular session? How many of your developers? Can you just raise yes or something on the chat? Any of your developers in this session, or all ops person has come here? Okay, we have at least 2 folks there. Nice, nice. Okay, assume that others are pseudo developers kind of thing, at least some bash script and so on. Okay, so let me just go to the screen mode and then we jump into the thing. So today's talk is about what a developer needs to know about DevOps. So we are going to look into that topic here. My name is Neependra and I'm founder at CloudYuga, which we started close to 7 years now. At CloudYuga, we train people on container tech, containers, Kubernetes, and many other stuff. We have clients like Flipkart, Intuit, and many others. Have overall experience of 18 years plus in the industry. And before starting CloudYuga, I worked in Red Hat for many years and other companies as well. And primarily in the systems domain, kernel, file systems, and so on. But of course, I did sysadmin support engineering also. I'm CSF ambassador. I have published a book on Docker 2015, which is now 7 years back, like ages. Also built a couple of courses for the NS Foundation for their EDX and on their platform over the period of last few years. And I also done a couple of meetups in Bangalore, and one is online as well. Okay, so let's kind of rewind back a bit and why we create DevOps. Let's have to understand that particular stuff, and then we'll see the next things as we continue. So primarily, if we kind of go back like before 2000, and of course somewhere around 2000 as well, right? People when used to code, right? The code, the developer just code and hand over. So typically, we used to kind of go back or use the waterfall model of development process where things were sequential. You have the phases for everything like code design and all those things, and where the developer kind of raises the hand saying that, okay, I have done my code. Now I'll hand over to the QA, and from there we kind of go to the next level and so on. So that's where the devs primarily doing before the DevOps era. And what were the ops responsibilities? So if you look at a very high level, the ops just want to kind of make sure that their server is running, their infra is running all the time. Be it means that, okay, they have to kind of run some kind of very stable version of a software, maybe an OS also, and so on. And they were very kind of receptive about taking the new changes, right? So not sure how old are you, but if you have worked in this earlier DevOps domain, right? Earlier DevOps, you have seen that, right? Ops person used to say kind of, no, you can't install this particular Python version on the production because this production is very sane and we can't kind of break anything and so on. So they'll kind of do everything, make sure that their production does not go down, or if it is, for very limited time, because that's where their KPI is, right? That make sure that our site is up all the time, correct? And what happened with that is people just kind of throw the responsibility to each other, right? Developer develops something and give it to the QA. And if the QA person asks, developer would say, oh, it was a my environment, some problem you may have in your setup and so on. Then the time kind of being put up there and the QA would do the testing on its own. And then from there, you'll have other stages in between, but it'll go to production after that. So it's called as throwing over the wall. You just do your work, throw it across it, and that's it. Now you'll take some rest by the time somebody else do their job and so on. So as you can see, there are a lot of challenges are here in between, right? When this kind of things would happen. But then we kind of move to Agile and cloud, right? Now, what is an Agile? Agile is a way to kind of make things kind of do things in a planned way. I'm sure all of you would know about sprints, right? There's a kind of all of you know about Agile, right? In which we have sprints, like you can have 2 or 4 week sprint in which you kind of look at for that particular 2 weeks task, and then or whatever the sprint cycle is that you kind of do all those things and then move on. So it is not that you are waiting for your code to be checked or to be kind of done towards the end of it, right? You kind of keep keep on top of it, and then make sure that things are in going as expected there, right? In the waterfall mode, what can happen is, okay, if one phase has taken some time for whatever reason, right, it can delay the remaining stuff as well. So if you don't want to kind of do that, that's where we kind of move to agile methods. And then of course the cloud computing has come, in which we can now do things very fast. We have to provision an instance or a thing on the for a testing or for production, and we go and create that, right? So if you look at now when Agile and Cloud has come, the previous model would no longer work, right? Because uh, if you have to kind of do something in a 2 week or 4 week sprint, you need to make sure that something is working. It's something what I'm doing is really makes sense or not. Those kind of things are there. And here, of course, there's a lot of waste of time in which what we see, right? If the developer has done the work, the QA would take enough, it's their own time to kind of do things. And then if it doesn't work, then the dev and QA team would come and think that's kind of just so much time consuming stuff. So of course, what happened eventually is that we could not meet the business demand on time. So think about, let's say you take an example of 2 apps, right? Swiggy and Zomato, for example, right? And let's say Zomato launched some new feature, and you need to have that feature in the Swiggy app very quickly, right? Now, if you go back to the previous method where somebody would do a code, then the testing would happen, and then something would happen, right? It would just take few months to have that feature which is required right now, correct? And not sure how many of you have heard the term, right? Whenever we talk to the management, they would say that I need this thing yesterday, right? Because it was so critical, it would have been better if I had this thing yesterday, kind of a thing, right? So then waste of time and money, because if a team is not working, it's like waste for you, right? Waste for the company, resources are gone there. So that was kind of challenge what we faced with the previous approach. That's where we kind of moved to DevOps, in which I'm sure that all of you have seen this particular diagram multiple times here, where the dev and the ops teams kind of work together, where you kind of continuously plan, code, test, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. This kind of happens continuously, and the agile and DevOps kind of become like very good companion to each other. So agile, DevOps, and cloud, this kind of things come together. And now things are having much more faster. You can release the code faster. You can release within a week, within a month, within a day, or whatever it is, right? Because with the DevOps, things have become much more better. So if I kind of look at from the what should be the ideal DevOps thing, right? So there would be some dev folks and the ops team, ops person. They should work together. So basically in the DevOps, we have dev and ops person working together as a team. So maybe dev doesn't know about all the stuff about the operation and so on. But if in the team there is a ops person, they can come and help and work together to make sure that the deployment happens on time, and there's no kind of go back and forth, right? Because every team works, or this team works together, and they take a responsibility in a shared manner. This is how the DevOps has been envisioned earlier, right? But then what happened is we kind of also made, in some cases, the devs were also responsible for doing the operation. So what we said, everyone does everything, correct? Which means that you are saying that the dev person is also responsible for making sure that the apps are running perfectly fine on the production. If some issue comes, the dev team also get into the call and all those things, right? This is a challenge, right? So some dev, they might be happy with that I'm going to get the responsibility of ops. I can see what's happening and so on. But not all devs are like that, right? They would say that, okay, now there's too much for me. I want to code, and that's it. But because of whatever internal company stuff and so on, if this thing is being applied, right? No, everyone does everything, which means dev and ops is just responsibility of everybody in the team. And if you look at it, there's no QA also here, right? The QA is also kind of come into the same responsibility there. So this kind of really got a lot of burnouts for the people, and they could not handle. And I mean, not everybody, but of course, some people find it difficult to kind of cope up with these things, and the burnout happens, and then whatever things can go wrong in the things. So now, what we are seeing here now, there should be a better way of doing things. So see, we cannot change what is there, right? We are going with the DevOps practices and so on, which is really good and which makes business faster. Now, what's happening is we are seeing this sort of platform team, which kind of creates these paved path. What is a paved path means that you have defined the way how something has to be done. So the heavy lifting is done by the platform team. They'll kind of deploy the infrastructure behind the scene. They'll give you some hooks and so on as a developer to kind of play with. And then developers just kind of follow that. If the developer follows the specific path that is being given, or the paved path given by the platform team, things would work out. And they would do pretty well because the control of the environment of the production is with the platform team, and dev is just following some things. So you may have seen in some cases, like when developer does not follow, because see, if I can go back to the previous slide, here, if the dev is doing everything, things may go wrong in the production because dev primarily responsible for the code, but if the ops is being given, the dev is not expert on that, like what security policy you have to apply, make sure that there are no CVs and so on. So dev may not be kind of look that up, and that can get a problem. But if I kind of go with this paved path method, in which the platform team has taken care of the security practices and all those things, and that is all kind of hidden. So I'll tell you more about it. So let's just look at how does the paved path, how we can create that, right? So the platform team can kind of come and they can create an abstraction on top of cloud providers. So as a developer, I don't care about on which cloud I'm in, right? I just run one command and it kind of does something for me in whatever cloud I'm in. So we can abstract out the given cloud, underlying cloud details, right? I can be, or the company can be on private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, or whatever, doesn't matter, right? There should be a defined way of doing things. Like if you do something, it would deploy, right? And I'm kind of hiding all the cloud details. Similarly, if I look at the well-defined CI/CD, in which again the platform team would kind of define the practices, what is required for the CI/CD to happen, and they would kind of give you the clear direction, right? Okay, this is if you do a code commit, we run this pipeline, and this would happen to you. So if that has been taken care, then the dev's life are much more easier, right? Then there should be a centralized login monitoring in which we kind of collect all the performance data, monitoring data of the clusters, apps, and so on in one place, so that there's no kind of going back and forth. How do I find my data? Which app is performing bad, and all those things, right? If I have a centralized database or centralized location where I can go and look at, or dashboard, you can see, right? I'll be happy to kind of follow that with them, right? Similarly, there should be built-in security practices, like if I to kind of apply some policies that when the apps are getting deployed, they'll not be running as a root user, or I should not be getting the images from other than the private repo of the company and so on. So those have been taken care into account. The dev lives can become much more easier. Similarly, there can be a dedicated onboarding team. So basically, it's not that the developer has to kind of go and learn the hard way, right? We can have a specific team in the company which can dedicate for just onboarding developers. So like if you want to onboard a service, you talk to this team and this team can help you out, be it training, be it showing your sample app, how it can be done and so on. And when that is being shown, then after that, again, the devs can follow and so on. Devs would also be kind of, we can also have some kind of a self-service environment to replicate in which uh, be it local or be it somewhere driven by the common data center what you have, where you click a button and you get the setup replicated for the developer to consume for a time being, so that the dev knows what's, if I do this thing, this similar thing is going to happen in the production. So if these things can be taken into account, we can have a paved path. And that is what this platform team are doing right now. They're creating these kind of defined way of doing things so that things happens very smoothly. So one of the way of creating this paved path is with Kubernetes. Again, it's one of the way, but there can be other ways of doing it as well. But if I talk about in the context of Kubernetes, so if we take Kubernetes, Argo, Prometheus, Kyberno, Helm, and many other tools which are there in the ecosystem, we can create this paved path. And that is what we are seeing, at least where I have been giving training to different companies, they have done like this. So we have Kubernetes on top of it, put some maybe custom layers. So people have built some custom CRDs and operators and so on, so that their custom algorithm or whatever custom logic is on top of Kubernetes. And then we have these tools to make things easy for us. So this is what how we can create the paved path. One of the way of doing it for sure. Now, what does dev would need to know to kind of follow the paved path and so on? First of all, of course, how to code. So now even for the code purpose, there are, of course, you can code in text editor and all that stuff, but now there are plugins are there. How you can attach a plugin of Kubernetes within your VS Code, all those things. So if you know those things, it would be much more better. Then the dev nowadays cannot say that, okay, I don't just, I just have the code. I don't care about what's happening out of this particular code, right? No, the developer need to know how does the cloud works and what's possible, right? So if the developer does not know, I can auto scale my applications on demand. The dev would not think on those lines, right? Similarly, in the microservices, when there are multiple things are running, like you have payment, you have order, you have catalog, and all those things. Different services are there, right? Now you should know that how I can kind of get the tracing done of my traffic throughout these things, right? Again, it's happening over the cloud, and you can be on a multi-cloud and whatever, right? So those things are required. So dev has to know about how the cloud works and what exactly possible, right? Can I create an environment with the Terraform on the fly? Again, I'm not saying that the dev need to become an expert on that, but developer need to have an understanding what is possible, so that at least when the dev and the ops team talk, they talk in the same language, kind of a thing. Because see, you can't just stay with devs. You say that I don't want to have an ops. You have to kind of have all the team. That's how successful business and successful companies runs. Then we definitely need to know how does the CI/CD works in the environment or that paved path what is being created, right? So again, at a high level, right? If you look at this particular pipeline here, right? What we are doing is when the git commit happens, we kind of do to a code repo. Then there's something called Jenkins is here. Jenkins can pull that particular source code. Then we run some test cases, build images, push the image registry. Then we update the Helm charts. Then from the Argo we deploy on Kubernetes, right? So these things are happening, right? So understanding of these things need to be known by developers. So even though everything is happening behind the scene, right? Like dev may just say that, okay, if I do a code commit, I have a URL, and if I click on that URL, that is the deployed code in the staging environment. And if I click the next button, deploy, it gets deployed to production. So at least that's going to be a regular flow for a developer, but he or she should know how is it happening, correct? You can't be ignorant and say that, okay, no, I don't care about it. So you need to know how does the CI/CD works in your current org. And if you have suggestions, make it better, perfectly fine. But otherwise, you kind of know these things, that how things are happening, and then of course you can just focus on the code there. The dev need to know the strategies of deployment, right? So blue, green, canary, rolling up this. These are the different strategy of deployments on the production. So you know that when you have the high, what do you call, say, a site which get a lot of traffic, right? You cannot just update the website on the fly, like with the blink of a second, right? You can, but when and how you will be doing it, that is being defined by the strategies. So what to apply when, and what would be the delay of upgrading the newer version and all those things. So these things need to be known by developers, so that developer can take a decision what works best. So if you have to do a quick fix, right, then you know that out of which will I pick it up right now, or which I can do it at a point of time, and so on as well. So these things are need to be known by the developers for sure. Then once things are running in production, something goes wrong and so on. So then when we have centralized data collection and graphing tool kind of a thing, right, where I can look at all of my data, which is log, which has been, how it's been performing and so on, right? So a developer need to know how to read this data and understand what's happening, right? Because things are now going all the places, right? Different services and so on. So we do a correlation of that, right? And of course, we have tools for doing that. And the developers may be the best person to kind of read this data and make and work with the ops team to kind of see what may be going wrong. Because things goes wrong all the time. Things are not perfect for sure. So if you can read this data, it is really good for that as a dev's perspective. So you kind of spend some time to kind of understand what we are getting, what is this throughput, what is the latency, and the delay and all those things happening to and from the services and so on. So once you kind of see that, visualize the data and see it, right? Because this data, if you look at, it's just a bunch of graphs are there, right? But unless I make a sense of it, it will not make any difference. So that as a developer, if I can read this and understand and make changes according to in my code, that's what we are looking there. Then, of course, dev need to do a continuous learning these days. You can't, and then a different field, right? Again, don't take me wrong that you have to kind of become an expert on ops. No. You need to at least have an overview of things, what's happening in and around, so that you are up to date, and that of course has that of course has a developer in their own career journey and so on, right? So keep learning, and not just your code perspective, make yourself with algorithm, but of course in and out, because we can't live without cloud these days, right? So that's going to continue. So that learning is there. And of course, the last thing is how to effectively communicate with the platform team. See, again, developers are going to be lot in number than the platform team for sure, right? So when you have to escalate something, you know what to discuss and how to communicate in a better way, right? So what may say that when platform team would ask something, right, they'll kind of give you a template, okay, do these things and whatever, right? So basically make sure that the devs are following that standard procedure, so that the platform team can come back and give the resolution to the problem very quickly. So those are things which are required there. I'd like to thank Srinan and Karan, who has helped me review this particular slide deck and give me some inputs there, so that we can kind of come up with this slide deck here. Srinan has been an Intuit for a very long time, and Intuit had run like hundreds, thousands of nodes or hundreds of clusters of Kubernetes in their org, and that's what they have followed. And Karan is part of GitHub, and he also has a lot of inputs from the dev perspective and the ops perspective. So that's how the input is being collected, and then we have built this particular slide deck here. Any questions? I think I'm done with my slide deck. I have one more, but that I can take later. At this point of time, any questions which are coming, put on the chat, or you can just ask, because on the Zoom we can ask. Yeah. No questions. Hope that was useful. I'm not sure, like if there's no questions or it is either completely clear or there are some doubts or it was not delivered well. So happy to hear any feedback also you would have. That's perfectly fine. Um, okay. So one question. Um, in a scenario like what you discussed right now, where developers are not limited to just pushing the code to Git, what factors or who defines the ownership of the overlapping zone, right? So of course, the overlapping zone definitely comes, and devs sometimes get kind of lost unless they follow the standard procedure there, right? So when this platform is being built within an org or within your whatever where you work, right? So when this is being built, the ops and the dev team come together, and they kind of or lay down the guidelines, right? How things need to happen in our org. See, every company is different. They will be doing things differently. But when they agree on the common ground, uh, they kind of come up with the best approach, right? Let's say, do you want to use Argo or something else in your environment, right? Would you want to kind of use the Helm charts and not, right? While you're deploying the apps and so on. So that is when the other than the entire dev team, there would be some representative of devs. They kind of come together and they kind of work together to kind of make this paved path for all the developers. And of course, it's a continuous process. Things would change as we continue to kind of do in production and so on. But these overlapping zones are being covered as we continue. But initially, it starts with the two teams coming together, and one team takes ownership, saying that I would do all of these things for you, right? I will kind of abstract the cloud. I would give the well-defined CI/CD pipelines and so on. See, what we have seen more and more, the devs don't want to do an ops work, right? But they should know about what is happening in and around in the environment there. So even we see that all of this Kubernetes and all those things, right? It has to become boring such that nobody knows what is beneath it, correct? But we are not there yet that the developer can just code and do a code commit and do a code commit, something happens throughout. We haven't made that particular leap so far that it is very kind of the old way, right? Like that you do a code commit and everything is happening, right? So it's just not everything kind of underlying hidden right now. It is there, and unless we kind of reach to a position or reach to a situation there where that can be done, right? We have to kind of live with this or kind of stay with this particular course here, which is, of course, I think is a good way of doing things because as you're up to date with your stuff and what's happening in and around, it's beneficial for both devs as well. Um, and yeah, let me just see that if there's any point being missed here. Yes, ownership of the production lies with some other team, while the devs are being kind of doing to follow the best practices, what is required, right? So as long as they are following the understanding, we are all in a good shape there. Hope that answers the question, Prakash. Or did I answer that or not? Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Just last slide. I just want to mention here, we have started this cloud engineer bootcamp because we have seen that when people go for internship or jobs, they are not ready for their kind of basics, right? So we are kind of started this program for 3 months in which we are saying that if you kind of do these things for the 3 months, as we are saying, one would be ready for internship and the jobs. So if you know somebody or if you want to kind of join, please go and check out this link and share among your network and so on. We just kept very minimal fees. You can just check on the page further. I'll not take your time here. That's all from my side, guys. I hope I was within time. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other question, I'll be happy to answer on the chat, or if you just want to ask, okay, to kind of respond to that.